This is gonna be like the mid-range lens of Samyang's current 1.4 lenses with autofocus for Sony cameras, but is it any good though? Before we jump into the review, I just want to say thank you so much for all the incredible support that you give me here on this channel. We are crushing the subscriber growth right now, so awesome to have you here. And if this is your first time watching me, then you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button because, you know, that'd be appreciated. And let's get back to the lens, okay? The build quality feels solid, and I would say that it's on par with the other Samyang lenses that I've tried so far. And if you want to check those reviews out, I've put every link to all the lenses, all the Samyang lenses that I've tried in the description below. So you can just go there and, you know, have a good time over there on the other videos as well. It doesn't have any kind of buttons or switches or anything like that. And the only thing that you got is basically the focus ring. The casing on the lens is made out of metal, which gives it this like premium look, and it feels really good when you're holding it because it gives it this like quality feeling when it's a metal casing around it. I don't know why, but it feels good. And you also have this red trademark ring that goes all the way around the lens. It weighs 556 grams, which is 1.22 pounds for all you Americans out there. Even though it's kind of heavy, it's by far not as heavy as the other 50mm lenses that is out there with 1.4 aperture. For example, the like size lens, Sony size 50mm, I think that is like close to a kilo, so that's a really heavy lens. And like when you got this mounted to your Sony camera, it's actually gonna feel quite well balanced because, you know, it's not too heavy. But walking around like a full day of shooting with this lens might put some strain on your wrist. So the focus ring on this lens is actually way smoother than it is on the 35 and the 85mm, and I do think like Samyang could have made the exact same focus ring all over the whole series because this is really good. Personally, I do not like the rugged metal that you have on these focus rings because it will get scratched really easy. The only Samyang lens that has had a weather sealing gasket here in the back is the 85mm, which is really good. So let's see if this one has one. It doesn't. I do think that Samyang could have put a weather sealing gasket here in the back on this lens too, because I mean, like, if they can put it on the 85mm lens, then they definitely can put it on this lens. So Samyang, tummen ner på den. The focusing distance is 45 centimeters, or what is that? 45 centimeter, 1.47 feet. It's not like anything special, and it's basically kind of a standard for this focal length, but it will give you a really blurred out background when you're using it at that distance. And with that said, it brings us into the image performance of this lens, because that's the most interesting part, huh? A 50mm lens is mostly gonna be used for like portraits and street and landscape and product photography, and there's a reason why a 50mm lens is called a nifty 50, because you can basically use this for anything. I took some photos of my beautiful fiancée Amanda and my son Alex to see how the lens performed when I was shooting with it like wide open at f1.4, and it does look sharp, but when I stopped the lens down to f2.8, then it was like way sharper. And when you're shooting those like product photos, then at f1.4, I wouldn't say that this lens performs that good actually, and I would probably use it at like 2.8. And as always, I had to do a comparison with another lens, and the only lens that I had in the same focal length was the Tamron 2875, but we all know that that lens is incredible sharp, eh? So shooting both lenses at f2.8, the Tamron lens is really sharp, like that kind of sharp, and this lens is actually quite soft when you compare the two side by side. And if you stop down the lenses to f4, the Tamron is still the sharpest lens. So yeah, the Tamron is really good. The Bokeh does, in my opinion, look really good when you're shooting with this lens at f1.4, and you know, Bokeh is a really subjective thing, so I'm not going to be the judge on this, and I'm gonna show you some pictures and you can decide whether it looks good or not. So here you go. The autofocus works okay. I wouldn't say that is on par with, for example, the Samyang 55mm, which is really good, or like any of the Sony native lenses, because they're just insane. But like, it did work with IAF, and it had some issues of tracking the subject, but generally it worked really good. The noise of this autofocus motor is... Now that is like an old fax machine. The video autofocus of this lens is, well, like, I don't know what we should call it, but it is, I guess it's on par with the other Samyang lenses that I've tried. I wouldn't say that it's good. Personally, I would not take this lens to shoot an event or professional video with, because you can't really rely on this if you use autofocus. But like, if you only use manual focus, then, you know, it does produce a really good image. If I were to put my money on a 50mm prime lens, then I would go for the Sony size 55mm f1.8, because I had that lens when me and Amanda went to the Maldives, and that is by far the sharpest lens that I've ever used on a Sony camera. It is incredibly sharp, like sharp. But then again, it's almost 2 times as much as this lens. So if you really need a 50mm lens with a 1.4 aperture on a budget, then I would recommend this lens, but I would take that money and invest them in the 55mm lens instead. So, would you buy this lens, or would you go for the size 55mm or the size 51.4 that is even more expensive? Drop a comment, because, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, because it does help a lot and is really appreciated. So thank you for that. And you know, if you haven't subscribed yet, that'd be appreciated as well. And if you want to support this channel, and if you want to buy any of the gear that I use to shoot my videos, then you can just go down to the description below, and then you can you know, purchase the gear that you want on Amazon, because then I do get a small kickback from that. So again, thank you for watching, and have a good one, and take care. Cheers.